Right, so that's 11:01, so I think we'll make a start. I'd just like to take a moment to introduce myself. I'm Josephine Beech-Brandt. I work on the ARCHER2 service desk. We have a team that deals with income queries that our users submit, and we try and provide assistance across the board, really. I answer quite a lot of questions about the access mechanisms, and we thought with the new service coming online, it would be a good idea just to try and hold this webinar today to go over some of the main access routes for ARCHER2. I'm pleased to say that we also have Francis Collinburn and Rebecca Howe here today. Francis works at NERC and Rebecca is EPCC. So they will be available if any questions come up that I am not able to answer. And I also have my colleague, Lorna Smith, who's the Deputy Director for ARCHER2, and she will be able to provide any answers for technical assessment questions and more on the computational science side there. So welcome. I should mention that ARCHER2, we do have our initial set of first users on the system, so it's nice that we've got the full cabinet in place in Edinburgh, and we've opened it up to around 100 users this week, so that's really promising, and they're getting on and testing. Okay. And a slide with the partners, the ARCHER2 partners. There's UKRI, showing and NERC, they're the partner agencies. Ourselves at EPCC, we are the service providers, and also we provide the CSC support. And Craig Hewlett Packard Enterprise Company, they are the hardware providers. So there will be quite a lot of information in this talk, but like I say, I'm happy to provide any answers, and hopefully some of the routes will become clearer. And one of the motivating factors for which route you would choose would be, these are the four main ones that I've listed here: the amount of computation you require, the duration you require it for, the remit that your science fits into, and who is going to fund your research. The ARCHER2 CSE team, we assess the technical suitability of the project, but it's the research councils that actually assess the science case. Further details are provided on our website. That a lot of the information in this presentation has come from, and there's more information there again. If anything isn't clear, then you can always submit a query to ask, and somebody on the service desk will be able to provide assistance. So these main routes that I'm going to touch upon during this webinar, some in more detail than others. If you were not a user, some of them have been slightly renamed, and a lot of the mechanisms are the same, essentially. So this is quite a useful slide that EPCC put together that shows an overview of a flowchart for EPCC researchers, and how you may determine which is the most appropriate route for you to apply for. So if you start in the middle here, you want to access ARCHER2, and there's the various questions which take you out to the various options there. And this will be on our website. I don't want to spend too much time on this just now, because I'm going to go through the individual end results, if you like, the individual routes, and it may seem confusing at this point, but basically you can see it just takes you through the flow of where you end up. So if you need a lot of computational research, you'll go to a Pioneer project. If you just want a small amount of time to test, pump priming. Urgent time, we have this urgent access that you can apply for. Compute only, so you don't require any funding for staff effort or overhead costs, then you can apply for the consortia or the access to HPC call. And then if you want this guaranteed computational resource for over 3 years and all the financial support, you would apply for a full peer-reviewed grant. And if you're just a user that wants to try out ARCHER2, often new users to HPC, you can try it out small amount of time via the driving test. Okay. So I just mentioned there the ARCHER2 driving test. This was brought online as part of the ARCHER service as well. It was intended to promote access to HPC to new users and communities. It's available for academic and non-academic researchers working in UK-based research institutions. We hope it's a simple, easily accessible way to get access. We ask users to complete the driving test, which is an online multiple choice question test. If they don't complete this successfully first time, there's no restriction on taking the test again. So if you got halfway through and maybe MPI knowledge wasn't up to speed for the test, you can go away, you can complete some of the online training material and then retake the test. And once you do complete it successfully, you get small allocation for up to 12 months. However, there is only one driving test allocation per person. So it's not really, it's not a route of long sustained, large amounts of time, but it is a good route for new users to come on board. Another lightweight access is the pump priming access. This is now the successor to the ARCHER Instant Access project. So this is only available to the EPCC researchers. Again, it's a small allocation for 6 months, and it's used primarily for trialing ARCHER2. If you need to port code, do some feasibility studies, benchmark for preparing for larger applications. The expectation for this pump priming is, as the name suggests, that you're preparing to apply for time for a peer review process and larger times, more substantial times for a larger project. And it's a one-off allocation. You can't get this and then ask for more resource to be approved. And it's not a way to get repeated allocations. For the pump priming access, we asked the EPCC researchers to complete a technical assessment, which they submit to the ARCHER2 team. They complete that, and then we send it to EPCC, who confirm if it is within the EPCC remit. Okay, so this one is only available for the EPCC science. For the large access for EPCC researchers, the three major ways here. We have the grant, which if you're a researcher, you'll be well aware of. This has now changed, so that if you apply for ARCHER2 time on the grant, you can now apply for the duration of your time. Previously, this had been limited to 2 years, but now if you're applying for a 5-year peer review grant, you can apply for 5 years worth of ARCHER2 time. And there's no limit on the resources here. If you can provide, prove your science case to the panel, it's totally on the panel approval. And there's also funding that comes with grants, so if you need funding costs. We also have the Access to HPC course. This is the successor to the ARCHER VAP, and it's been combined now with the Tier 2 Open Access course, which means that it's at the same time, so your application may be moved from ARCHER2 to one of the Tier 2 systems or one of the Tier 2 systems to ARCHER2. So there's a triage in place, and the applications are moved to the most appropriate resource. These projects can last for up to 1 year and are a minimum of 4,000 CUs. And we expect the calls to open around every 6 months, but it will depend on the demand for that. The other EPCC access route is through the Pioneer project, and this is successor to the ARCHER leadership project, and these are for ambitious, computationally intensive simulations. These can last for up to 2 years, and we do set the call last time had a minimum of 165,000 CUs per year, so we're looking for ambitious projects here. For all of these access routes, we do require the applicant to complete the technical assessment form, and again that needs to be submitted to the service desk ahead of submitting the application. When these calls are issued, we publicise that, and the date for submission and the deadlines are up on our website and sent out as appropriate. The other way, don't worry, NERC, I haven't forgotten about you. I just thought I did think, yeah. The other way for EPCC researchers is by joining one of the EPCC consortia that we have on ARCHER and now ARCHER2. These groups are formed around research communities that have proven substantial and continuous computational needs. Each of them have their own way of applying for access and allocating time. The details are provided here and also up on our website. So, for example, if you're a researcher within biomolecular simulation, you're not in a position to apply for your own grant at the moment, it would make sense to get in touch with the consortium leader here and ask if there's any allocation that can be provided to you. They will guide you through their own individual process. Okay. And now we do come to NERC. So NERC, the majority of the NERC resources managed through pre-NERC consortia there I've listed. NERC handle their allocations in a different way, so there's no technical assessment required for the NERC applications. And we do ask that you look at its pre-consortia and that you make contact with the appropriate one, and the allocations are made through NERC, and the details are provided on the NERC website there. So I did mention previously the EPCC grant, and I want to reiterate this point that it has changed. You can be awarded the duration of your grant. So previously there was the restriction and you had to apply for the top-up. That's no longer the case. Technical assessment must be completed. So ask for access through the NERC grant system. Again, please contact the relevant NERC consortium leader for advice, and the details are there. We also get requests for grants from other UKRI bodies. We have some PBSRC users and the MRC users, and other funding bodies such as the European grant, Horizon 2020 funded bodies. We do ask technical assessments to be completed for these, and contact service desk for any advice around this. If the allocation is coming from the EPCC portion of the service, and we will seek approval from EPCC before making those allocations. I mentioned there's the top-up. These will be for any existing grant projects that have been approved that weren't necessarily for the duration of the grant. So after 2 or 3 years, you may need to ask for further time there. Again, technical assessment needs to be completed and resourced via the HPC core. ARCHER2 is also part of the PRACE network, and UK researchers can apply for PRACE time There's details on the Praise website and also on the ARCHER2 website with some tips on how best to apply for the Praise time. Okay. So I have mentioned the technical assessment process a few times there, so I just wanted to cover it briefly. We have the technical assessment forms up on the ARCHER2 website on the access page. You complete the form and then submit this to the service desk. The CSE will then assess the technical suitability for ARCHER2, and if assistance is required completing the form, we're happy to do that, especially for people who go through the process the first time. We ask for scaling data and things like this, so we can provide assistance to complete the form. Once it's completed, the CSE will sign it and return this to the applicant, and then the applicant will include this with their application to EPCC. Now, I believe when the JES system goes and is replaced by the new UKRI portal, you'll no need to include the technical assessment, but you will be asked if you have approved completed technical assessment. But that new system isn't in place just yet. The technical assessment form covers the requirement, if you like, for ARCHER2. So we do ask applicants to demonstrate that you need the requirement for ARCHER2. As I mentioned, within the UK HPC ecosystem, we also have the Tier 2 systems, and sometimes projects may be more appropriate to be placed on a Tier 2 system. So we do ask for the demonstration that you do require ARCHER2. And we also look at the suitability of code for ARCHER2, the parallel models being used, the dependencies, etc. Whether the scale can whether the code can scale. So there's no point in us having this capability machine if we're not making full use of it. And must be specific to the type of problem addressing the application. General scaling of data is not enough, so we do want to see scaling of the code you will be using. We also ask if you've got technical expertise within your team. ARCHER2 can provide assistance, but we are looking, will you be able to get onto ARCHER2, and will you have the knowledge to be able to use it? And also a new section on your data management plans. So where will you organize it, how will you store it, and transfer of data at the end of the project. Okay. So I've managed to get through the slides in faster time than I anticipated, perhaps. But I was hoping that this would be quite an interactive session. So we do want to make sure that people know how to apply for time and maybe the best route for them. So that hasn't come up very well there. The email address is support@archer2.ac.uk. You can always submit questions about access mechanisms there. As I say, we also have the team on hand that can provide assistance for the technical assessment forms if required. And I would finally like to thank Rebecca and Francis and Lorna for being available to answer any questions that you may have, or I may even answer some questions too. So if you have any questions, please put up your hand. Is that the best way to do this, Claire? Or you can, if you don't want to actually speak, you can type it in the chat window there, and we can.
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of people who have grants on ARCHER1, I guess you should call it, what's the mechanism for transferring that to ARCHER2?
Okay. I'll answer this question, and then if Francis or Rebecca want to add anything, then they're more than welcome to do so. As you may be aware, we don't know the date yet. That hasn't been confirmed when Archer will be switched off. Once we have that date, we will notify all of the active projects that will be transferred from Archer to ARCHER2. So the intention is that any active project, so any project that still has allocation on Archer, will transition to ARCHER2. There is a conversion factor that has been calculated. Will convert your Archer cows, your killer AUs, will convert these into the new ARCHER2 CUs, and that will be applied at a point. So at the date that ARCHER2 is switched off, at the ARCHER1 is switched off, we'll take a snapshot of your allocation, and that allocation will be converted into the new allocation, and you will have that on ARCHER2 when ARCHER2 is ready for all users. Did that answer your question?
Yes, partly. So a follow-up question from that. So this, from personal experience, we have quite a long grant where we have done a couple of top-ups. Would we have to make a further top-up application for ARCHER2, or would that be automatic?
Well, I see Rebecca put her hand up, but I think if your top-up has expired, then you will need to make a new application. Rebecca, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say in terms of the, sorry, can you hear me, Joe? Yeah?
Yes.
In terms of the conversion rate, we do have one conversion rate for all users, but we have designed this in such a way that we want to make sure that no one is worse off on ARCHER2 than they would have been on ARCHER1. So because we've been able to benchmark a couple of the codes, some users will get more of an increase, just through luck almost, that their codes will perform better. But certainly no users should be worse off, and that's why we've used a really safe and conservative estimate on that conversion rate.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
In terms of if your top-up allocation has expired, you will need to reapply, and you could look at the access to HPC call, or if you're applying for a further grant.
This would be.
If your grant is still in place though, and you've just run out of the allocation, you can apply for a top-up as part of the access to HPC call.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks. I don't know if there's any other questions. I was either amazingly clear or amazingly unclear. I'm not sure. Yes, Ben, is that you just putting your hand down, or have you got something further?
No, this is another question, sort of following on from the about a technical assessment. So I understand why you need to make one, but what mechanisms are there if you're doing something completely new and you think you need Archer? Why do we have to have a make a speed up check if we know, if we use a code that's already on Archer and that we have a vague idea how well it will scale? Would the way forward be to ask for some pump priming time to check, or what's the best way to do this without sort of reinventing the wheel?
Yeah. Lorna, do you want to answer this one?
Sure. I mean, the point of pump priming is to allow you access to a small amount of time to prepare for a larger application. So you could certainly ask for pump priming time to assess the scalability for ARCHER2. Equally, if you have reasonable scalability on, if you've been using Archer, do you not have the scaling evidence from Archer?
Yes, I do. So this was more of a sort of a formal thing. If you always need to do the scaling from scratch, for was more the question.
So if you have scaling so you need to provide scaling evidence for the sort of science you're going to be doing on ARCHER2. So if you don't have that evidence, then that's the main value of pump priming.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Have we got any other? I must say, the driving test has been very successful. That's a great way for new users to come on. So if you are a new user in this seminar, I would encourage you to check that out, because that enables you to get a small amount of time and access to the system quickly, and to test things out before putting in a larger application. But I think if we don't have anything else, I would like to again thank Rebecca and Francis for coming along today, and Lorna for also being available to answer any of the questions. It is an exciting time now, as ARCHER2 is starting to feel real into service, and we are available on the service desk to answer any questions and provide assistance as required. So thank you, and thank you for your time attending. Good morning.